Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Nexus Insights. This is the podcast where we are focused on having authentic conversations with interesting people. I am so excited to have Natalie here today. She's going to be just sharing, I don't know, we'll see where we go with all sorts of stuff. I mean, I feel like there's so much that we can talk about, and I'm really excited to see where we go and just get a chance to hear from you. But I also have my wonderful co-host, Miss Josie. I realize I haven't been introducing you on everyone, so I just
okay.
like she just sits there.
I really do.
But yeah, so Natalie, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Really excited to talk with you and just hear about your story and just what you have to share with people. And as I mentioned to you before, I like to kick these off by just giving people the opportunity to answer a question that is, if you could share one thing with the world somehow, and this one message was going to hit everybody across the globe, and they were going to hear what that was. What would that message be? So with that, what would you share with people?
That's quite the loaded question there, right?
It's a big
Start
one.
us off. And in thinking about this, I felt like what I kept being drawn to, I'm like, oh, that's too cliche. It's too cliche. But then I'm like, you know what? No, because this is my truth. And so even though it is cliche and it may not apply to everyone, I feel that my message would be life's difficulties and curveballs can often bring about the greatest blessings. And in my story, I feel I have two kind of turning point events in my life, and it definitely, despite the challenges that I've endured and worked my way through, and I'm still working my way through, that I feel like one of the lucky ones.
And tell us more, like, with that, while you were thinking through that being what you wanted to share, what was it that made you think like this is what I'm going to go with? Because you're right, it's a huge question. I know that. And that's why I like try and give people some time to think about it. But what about that, like, why did you want to share that?
I would say in the last year and a half since being diagnosed with cancer, I just have had so many people telling me like, oh, you're so inspiring and you're so motivating and hopeful and positive and all these things. And I feel that way. I feel I'm able to be that way because of just all the positivity that is brought into my life, and like people, all the kindness that people have shown me over the last year and a half, with their, messages and words of encouragement, and telling me every day just how much I mean to them, and hearing from students, and I'm a former teacher, and their parents, and all my friends and family. Just every time they see me, they're so vocal about what I mean to them, and because of that, I'm able to live every day like positively. It's just such a great way to live my life despite this difficulty that I'm dealing with. So I wish that everyone could have all of that given to them. It's unfortunate that it took a stage 4 cancer diagnosis for people to be that way towards me. And it's, I've tried to kind of reroute my brain to say everyone deserves this in their life. Everyone deserves to have people tell them all the time how much they mean to them. And it's just been the last year and a half has been so challenging, but it's also been like the best year and a half of my life. So I just kept getting drawn to that yes, like this is the biggest curveball life could possibly throw me, but I see so much good in it at the same time.
Yeah, and when we were talking off camera, I was, telling you about when I was in the Army and just kind of the way that, and I come back to the Confucius quote, and I've brought it up in this podcast before, but it's every man lives 2 lives. The second begins the moment he realizes he only has one to live. And I think that for me, when I was in the Army, being around as much violence as there was, and seeing, especially in the Ranger Regiment, like I would talk to people about just normal days. And like even in training, it's like, oh, we're going to go jump out of this plane a couple times, or we're going to go do this shoot house where you're literally shooting live rounds within 3 feet of your buddy, and just it's so dangerous and just, but you kind of get used to it. But then it also for me is like watching friends of mine who I cared about, get really hurt or get killed, and realizing like, wow, this is life is like that, and so and that was one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you, because I think what you know, if it's been anything similar to what I've seen, like in my life, just with my perception on, how temporary life can be, it's something that I would never wish on my friends, to have them see people they get, they care about get killed, or, or get hurt, or just have their whole lives changed. However, I understand what you mean. Where you're like, I wish people could see life through like this lens, or like to have people like talk to them this way. And so, why don't we just start? Maybe just tell your story on, when you found
Mhm.
out you had cancer, and just kind of what, the emotions from the highs, the lows, the positives. Maybe just share your story, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are dealing with it, or have gone through something similar. And I'd love to just have you talk to us about that.
Yeah, you bet. It was the summer, July of 2024, and I should probably start by saying that I have been a very healthy person my whole life. My parents always remind me that I didn't miss a single day of school my whole life. I doubt that's true. I think I missed a few, but I just was raised with parents that you're fine, you're just power through. I remember the first time I got the wind knocked out of me and I thought I was dying, and my dad just looked at me and he's like, you're going to be just fine. And I couldn't believe he wasn't like caring more about the fact I was dying right there. So, but just, tough love, I guess. And that was how they raised all 7 of us kids. So anyways, I lived a very healthy life, and felt like I did all the things to take care of my mind and my body, and staying active and trying my best to eat healthy, and do all the things to, get good sleep, and all the things. So I was pretty shocked when I took myself to the ER. I thought, talking about eating healthy all the time, not really, because the night before I had taken my youngest to the movies and ate a whole box of Milk Duds. And that whole night I just had the worst stomach ache. And of course I was blaming it on the Milk Duds, because I never really ate sugar like that. And so the next day, after about 24 hours of continuing to feel just my guts like hurt so bad and I was bloated, I was like, I think maybe I have a blockage or something. So I just drove myself to the ER thinking they were going to flush me out or give me some heavy-duty Pepto-Bismol or something like that. And within an hour, I was getting CT scans, and the ER doc came in and told me that they found, of course they can't say it's cancer, but at the time, until the pathology comes back, but he said, we found a large mass in your colon and spots all over your liver. And it just, in that moment, it's like everything changes. And just, my kids, like it just, that was my moment, of life or death. And it's like, okay, here we go. And it was rocked my world. But I had about 3 weeks before I started treatment where it was challenging to keep my head in a positive space, because I just wanted to start doing something about it, right now. And it takes time to go through pathology and come up with a game plan with your doctor and the surgeons and everyone. But once I got it going on my treatment, I just knew that I was going to be okay. And I just felt this calmness that I was meant to do this, and I knew what I needed to do, and I just had to buckle down and take care of it. So it was about 10 months of treatment. I had 10 rounds of chemotherapy and some targeted therapies. And then I went over to Seattle because there is no liver doctor in the state of Montana. So I went over to Seattle for about 6 weeks to have some surgeries on my liver, and they performed portal vein embolization, which cut off the blood supply to my tumored right lobe, and gave it a couple weeks to kind of beef up the healthier side. And then I had a liver resection at the end of January, and they removed 75% of my liver. Wow. And then I came back to Montana with my medical team here to deal with my colon tumor. Did that last year on St. Patrick's Day, and took out 30 lymph nodes, and got to a point where I was no evidence of disease last May. And I had 10 wonderful, glorious months of living with no cancer in my body, and just really being able to see life through that lens of just how beautiful it is, and how even the things that can weigh you down, like the everyday grind of, my Groundhog Day of mom life, of waking the kids up and getting them breakfast, making their lunches, getting them dressed, making their beds, rotating the laundry, doing the dishes, all the things. And now it's like, stuff that used to stress me out. It's like just such a blessing to still be able to do stuff like that. Mm. So that kind of ties back into my, my life's message of, even though this has been such a difficult, challenging thing that I've been forced to deal with in a way, how it's changed my perspective on my life, and it's just the best thing ever. It's such a gift.
What, because I can only imagine, like you said, you walk into the emergency room thinking I ate too many milk duds, mm-hmm. and then to have that type of news, like, did you drive yourself home? Did you call Charlie? What did you do?
Well, I actually, I had about 10 minutes to myself of just, I just kept remembering saying, my kids, like, oh my gosh, I just could not, at the moment you think like, this is it, like I'm dying right now, and my dad and my husband came down. I called both of them, and they were there. I asked the doctor to stop talking until my support team got there. Mm-hmm. And so once my dad and my husband got there, he kind of finished explaining, and he said, we need to admit her into the hospital, actually, because I had the tumor was blocking the gases from leaving my body. And so it was just like backed up. And so we had to get all of that flushed out. And then I ended up being in there for about 5 days so they could biopsy the colon and the liver and get all the samples they needed to come up with a game plan. So it was a pretty scary 5 days. And, also trying to protect the kids and not give them too much. It's just things that you never thought you would have to think about, and become an expert on. And, I just have 3 little kids. At the time they were 12 and 10 and 4. Mm. How do you share this information? Like I said, I didn't know, am I ever even getting out of the hospital at the time? So it was a crazy time for sure.
In talking with other people when they've dealt with different traumas or really hard things, it's one of those things that I think a lot of people forget if they haven't been through something, where it's not just us as people with our own emotions and fears and insecurities, but now it's like when you're bringing kids and trying to explain something to them, but still having to put on a brave face, but being terrified yourself. And I know that had to be, when you're having those types of conversations with your family, like, how did you and Charlie approach that with your kids as far as communicating things to them? And the reason I'm asking is because I always hope that someone can learn something to help them be in a better spot. And, and who knows, I don't know if someone will ever see this, but I think about there may be things that you did where you're like, man, knowing what I know, I wish I would have done it this way. Or maybe we tried this and that would have been better if we did this. When you were talking with your family, what do those conversations look like? Because it's a big difference in age between 12 to 4. Like, I'm sure the 12-year-old and your 10-year-old, a little bit more in the same level playing field, but like to have a 4-year-old at the time, like I just think about, my son when he was 4, and it's like, how do you explain something like that?
Right. And I don't know if there is right answers. I do know that I did not, or I have yet to regret how we handled it. So I'm happy to share that.
Please.
To be honest, at the time, I didn't even know what stage 4 meant. There never had really been cancer in my family's life. And I didn't understand the severity of what I was dealing with at the time. And then after my 5 days in the hospital, when, we were educated on kind of what this meant for my future and for dealing with it, my wonderful Dr. Zen Fenning, who is my colon surgeon here in Missoula, when he was visiting me in the hospital, he said to me, "You are not on the internet. Like your story, your statistic is not on the internet, and you need to stay off of it, and just trust your doctors and trust your mind and body, and we'll do everything we can." And I knew, of course, I was going to give it 110%. So hearing him say that meant a lot, and it helped me in communicating with my kids what this meant. And when I told them, we sat them down after the pathology reports came back, and, they could confirm with 100% certainty that it was stage 4 colon cancer that had metastasized to my liver. When I told my children that, I just said, Mom has cancer, Mom has colon cancer, and we're going to have to go through some treatment and surgeries, and, your mom's strong, right? Your mom, like, that's why we eat healthy, and that's why we exercise all the time, because like I'm ready to do this. Like, there's nothing I can't handle. And my 12-year-old at the time looked at me and said, "Does this mean you have stage 4?" And that was the first time I was like, okay, he's been doing his own research, right? Mm-hmm. Because that like did not come out of my mouth, nor had I had any prior knowledge of what that meant.
Could you explain what that means? Because I'm ignorant to what the different stages are.
Okay, you bet. So to be honest, I don't know a whole lot about the difference between, stages 1 and 2. But I know stage 3 is when the tumor, wherever the primary tumor is, has gone into the lymph nodes. So once it's in your lymphatic system, that is more dangerous. And then it is for spreading elsewhere and kind of being able to cure it. I guess some cancers you can still cure when it's stage 3. But once you're stage 4, it's metastasized to a second primary organ or more, two or more primary organs. And then that means it is not curable. It's treatable, but it's not curable. So you can get your body into remission where, like I said, I had 10 months where there was no cancer in my body. My scans were clean. My blood didn't show any cancer protein in it. And then just this last week at my 3-month scans, it showed up in my lungs. So now it's in my lungs.
And you were talking about your 12-year-old asking, sorry, Josie, does this mean it's stage 4? Mm-hmm. So what did that conversation, what did you say? How did you feel?
I said, Chase, you've been looking on the internet. And he said, yeah, I have. And so then I told him what Dr. Z had told me. And I said, all of those statistics on the internet, historically speaking, colon cancer has been, people in their 60s and 70s, maybe, smokers, ill health, whatever, obese. And, that's not everyone, but that's what made up a bulk of the statistics. And, you have a 5% chance of living 5 years. And so when you see that is very daunting and scary. And I didn't want him to think that means that's going to be me, because I'm 43 and I'm, much younger than a 70-year-old. And I feel healthy and strong and ready to fight this. So my story is not a part of that statistic yet. Mm. And so I made him pinky promise me that we were not going to do any more research online, and I've held true to that. I unless I'm looking up something medically, like if they want to do a certain procedure, I'll research that. But as far as like statistical odds, anything like that, I've never gone there. I just feel like it's not going to do me any good, and I knew it wouldn't do my kids any good, and so we made that promise to each other, and I feel good about it. Because we, even with this, relapse last week, it's, I feel like the vibe in our house is still very positive, and yeah, it stinks. It's in a new organ, but, we're trying to, okay, it's only 2 small tumors versus, I had 15 on my liver when we were first diagnosed. And we'll just do what we have to do and be ready to go by summertime. So.
Wow. Yeah. And then, I'm sure too, with Charlie, what has that been like? I don't even know, from a spouse's standpoint, all of us think, especially where, we take care of ourselves, we're healthy, things are going good, this happens to someone else, and so, what has that been like for you two as far as the way you guys have adjusted as a couple and just, your approach to life? Because I'm imagining it slows a lot of things down where you're like, what, let's focus on the things that are important. Let's make sure that we are prioritizing our family. Have you seen anything there that's been an adjustment, or how, from a spousal standpoint?
Unfortunately, Charlie's health hasn't been the best either. We found out 4 years ago that he was a type 1 diabetic. And we actually, initially he was misdiagnosed as type 2 diabetic, and then it wasn't until a month before my diagnosis they realized he was type 1. And so that kind of changed his plan of treatment, and he got put on insulin. And so he was just feeling like he was getting his health under control when this happened. And so, it's, I think for Charlie and I, we both have, it's part of the reason that we matched so well initially, our vision for our future and our family and our financial security, and just our work ethic and all those things was very much aligned in how we wanted to live our life. And not that that's changed drastically, but I would say if there's one thing we've taken out of it as a couple, it's that money isn't everything. We want to be financially secure, but we just need to live comfortably, because to us, time with our family and memories together is so much more than, retiring a multimillionaire. If you never even get to retirement, what's the point of, having millions of dollars?
That's something that I've tried to talk to. I had a couple in here recently. Oh no, you didn't sit in on this appointment. But a couple that I've been working with for years, and the wife is like, we have all this money, but my husband's afraid to spend any of it. And she's like, I just need, tell him we should spend some of this money. And a lot of times when I'm talking to retirees, it is exactly that. I'm like, guys, life is like this, enjoy this. You don't know how much time you have. You don't know how much longer you'll be healthy to travel, to do the things. And it's we always, I think, work so hard, and then people get in almost this oh, I've got all this, I can't lose it. It's none of us, it doesn't last forever. So let's actually enjoy this. And I kind of I know we kind of skipped over this, but so tell us just too about yourself. So are you from Montana originally? Or?
Yes,
Yeah.
Born and raised in Montana. I'm one of 7 kids.
Okay.
Number 2, there were 2 girls and then 5 boys. My parents had 7 kids in 6 years, so we're all very close in age.
Wow.
And still are to this day. I feel very fortunate that my siblings are some of my best friends. And that has been another blessing out of this is, 5 of the 7 of us live here in Missoula, 2 live up in Flathead. And even though we are in the same town, it's life is busy. You've got work and you've got kids and sports and you're going all these directions. And it just has brought us all, we make time for each other now. And it's been great. I am very lucky to have such wonderful siblings. So I've lived in Missoula my whole life, other than my first 2 years of my teaching career, I moved down to California just because there weren't any jobs here in Missoula. But I was very anxious to get back and came back in the early 2000s and have been here since.
Where did you and Charlie meet?
We're the same age, but I went to Loyola private school here in Missoula, and Charlie went to Sentinel Public School. But all my friends had gone to Sentinel, so I knew who Charlie was, even though we didn't officially meet until we were 23, I think, up at a basketball tournament in Charlotte, Montana.
Okay.
So, yep, he was playing in the boys' league. I was playing in the girls' league.
Nice.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like sometimes you're just like, oh, I wonder what the story was. What was the first date? What'd you guys do?
Our first date?
Yeah.
We went to the depot, and I could not believe he ordered like 3 meals. And I was like, yes, he just kept ordering more and more food. And I mean, that's how he is to this day. Food is his favorite thing in the whole planet.
Yeah, it's always interesting, like hearing people's stories and kind of like, oh yeah, how did that happen, and just like what led to it. Because yeah, when I first met you guys, I don't even know, it's probably been 6-7 years now ago. And
Rob, you are off. You are off because I remember
it
is longer because
is it really?
Yes, you first came when our middle son was just a year old, and he's 11 and a half. So
what? That's not.
I promise you.
Oh wow.
I promise you.
How did you guys meet?
We met through a mutual friend, Jen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jen introduced us, and back at that stage of my career, like I had no money for advertising or anything, and so I was just for
word of mouth,
friends talking to friends. And because it's funny when you were talking about your siblings, I've met a lot of them because you introduced me, and I'm always so grateful to Jen. You know, she has her quirks, amazing person at her core. And she introduced me to so many amazing people that I'm so thankful to her. And like, I hope if she ever watches this, she knows, like, I genuinely appreciated that because it led to so many great friendships. Man, it's been that long.
Yeah.
So I must have met with you guys pretty close after getting out of the Army.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
and we had only been married maybe 3 years by then. So we were to the point where we're like, okay, we need to start doing all the right things, and making smart choices with their money. And
10 years?
Yep.
Oh, man. Yeah,
Imagine like 10 years ago, you're like just becoming a client, and then you don't even realize 10 years in the future you're going to be on. Like, still have that
what
close.
Is a podcast?
Like,
10
what
years
is a
ago?
podcast? But like,
No,
you're going to have that kind of relationship with your financial advisor.
Yeah. It's, I think that's something I've always felt very blessed with, is that maybe I'm just lucky, but I think that the overwhelming majority of people I end up working with, I would say 80+% of them, I'm like, let's go have a drink, let's hang out. It's very, every now and then you get people who's like, oh, not really my flavor, but that's few and far between. But even then, it's like people I'm like, we just have kind of different beliefs, and God bless America, that's fine. But we could still be friends, But yeah, because I remember when you were first, where we met when you're at your guys' old house. Do you guys still have that as a rental?
We do.
Yeah. Okay. And then you guys moved over. I think you're over on the south side of town now, right? Yeah. You're not too far from where we're at. We live relatively close. I know exactly, I won't say the street or anything, but I know exactly where you're at there because I have another client that lives right around the corner from you.
Okay.
And so, man, I didn't realize it had been that long.
I know.
And
Time flies.
Yeah. So you tell us about, teaching, because you taught for a long time. And
I did.
I always want people who are hearing things to be able to hear from someone who's further down that path, who has that experience, and maybe just, again, like the idea of, being at someone's 10X. There's someone who right now is maybe studying to be a teacher, or maybe just starting out as a teacher and feels like, oh my gosh, I have no control over my class. I don't know what I'm doing. And just hearing from someone who's been there, done that, is like, it's going to be okay. Like, so tell us about, what did you teach?
So I taught for 21 years, 5th, 6th, 7th grade. I ended the last decade in 7th grade, which was probably my favorite. Okay. So, yeah. And, kind of going back to the beginning as well with my life message of, out of life's curveballs or tragedy often comes the biggest blessings. And other than cancer, the other part of my story is my mom, when she had a medical episode with after giving birth to my youngest brother. And since then, she has been chronically ill. And, I spent my whole childhood with my mom in and out of hospitals and going all over the United States, for treatments and surgeries and whatnot. And my dad was, the sole provider and worked hard, and he had 7 little kids and a sick wife. And I, at a very young age, was just very into children, like, my brothers and like mothering them. And had I known you were going to ask me about my early or my teaching career, I would have brought in my first class photo of all my little brothers, and I'm the teacher, and I'm like 5 years old, and they're like 4, 3, 2, 2, 1 years old, and it's our first class picture. But I used to make them do school with me. I just always knew that I loved kids and wanting to work with kids. So that is the only thing I ever wanted to do with my life, is be a teacher. And so when I graduated high school, I went straight in. I initially started thinking I wanted to teach high school, and then after my sophomore year, I switched to elementary. So it took me a little bit longer to get out of college, but once I did, I got my first teaching job down in Victorville, California, which was
nice.
Yes,
I have some family lives out in Victorville.
Moving myself down there. Actually, my dad moved me down there, but I didn't know anybody. And being so close to my family, and actually Charlie and I had just met that summer too. And I was like, well, I can't not take this job because I met this guy that, I'm going to end up marrying, but I didn't know it at the time. So I went down there for 2 years, and it was tough, but I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. I met some wonderful people that are still very close friends of mine. But then, I was excited to get back to Montana because I knew this is where I wanted to be for my life, near my family, and raise my own kids here. And taught in Lolo and taught at Washington Middle School.
Nice.
With some of the best colleagues and students and families and administration that there is. I feel very lucky in my career.
I can understand what you're saying too, because I have family in Victorville, so I was like, oh, all right, that's great. And then, but living in California versus living in Montana, like the way that people talk about like Texas or Florida, I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's where you want to be. But I'm always like, Montana is the promised land. Like Montana is like, and if you're thinking about moving to Montana from one of those places, check out Eastern Montana. Phenomenal. All right. But in all seriousness, like especially because, we're on the south side of town too. And, just the views looking into the valley and just like, I'm just like, God, you are amazing. Wow, this is incredible. And I wanted to go back. You were talking about like you always knew you wanted to be a teacher. That's not something I hear a lot, but the last guest we had was the same thing. She was an attorney, and she's like, I knew I always want to be an attorney. Like, what was it for you about the idea of teaching that you're like, this is the career path I want? Because I feel like that's pretty... I think it's rare today where, like you don't see a lot of people who truly know what they're going to do. And you see so many people who hop from job to job or career to career. What was it about teaching that caught your attention where you're like, this is for me? Well,
yeah, even as a mother, my kids are still too young to know what they want to do with their lives. But I'm already kind of starting to stress about that. Like, how am I going to guide them in the right direction with such a big, life decision? And I do feel very fortunate that I've always known that that's what I wanted. And I think it is my draw to children and just their innocence and their excitement and they've always brought so much joy to my life. I nannied all through college. Like I said, my brothers, raising them, and then I babysat, and then I nannied, and then I went into teaching. And so kids have always been a part of my life. And after my diagnosis, it was really hard for me to make the decision to retire. And I shared with my friends and family that motherhood is the only thing that would ever trump my desire to teach. And having more time with my own kids, at this stage of my life, I needed to make that the priority. But I miss it. I sub when I can, when I feel healthy enough to sub. And that still gives me, my dose of shenanigans. And yeah, there's difficult parts too. Teaching is not an easy profession. It's getting more and more challenging
I was going to bring that up too, because I feel like so many people who are teachers are just struggling so bad with maintaining the job that they have. I just barely went on like a short weekend trip to Arizona, and the guy that was driving my Uber, I just kind of got in a conversation with him, and he was like, oh, I always wanted to be a teacher. He started teaching, and he's like, I just couldn't do it anymore. Like, it was too stressful. The kids were horrible to me, and he ended up hating it so much. So I feel like I've heard that a lot, to where a lot of people are just really struggling with that career as a whole.
And I don't want to like feel like I'm something special in saying this or anything, but I really feel at the core of it all is that relationship piece with students. And if your heart is truly in it to have the relationships with the kids and help mentor them through, their education and their personal lives and, all the things really, because teachers do it all, then the other stuff is more tolerable, because that relationship piece never goes away. Wanting to make connections with the kids, even when, there's AI and, just attendance issues or people, vapes and just all the things that we didn't really have to deal with at the start of my career. And now it's, just getting exacerbated.
I can only imagine
every year.
with like what you have seen, with teaching for over 20 years, you're dead on. Like my daughter's 16 and, she has her challenges with school just like any other teenage girl. And, but man, I look at kids and just with social media, especially, and with like my son, my daughter, I'm no longer with my ex-wife. And so we, just have different parenting styles, and God bless America. I disagree with some of the things she does. I'm sure she disagrees with some of the things I do. That's just kind of what happened. However, there are some things I'm like, my son Lincoln, who I've since remarried, he's almost 8, but like I'm very much with Lincoln. Like he doesn't play Xbox unless we're playing something together, co-op, like like an arcade style game. I've already told him, like, listen, little dude, you're not getting a cell phone. Like, if you get a cell phone, it's going to be a flip phone, because I've seen with my daughter and with her friends how like these phones are they're everything to them. And it's almost to the point where it's like my daughter, when she's gotten in trouble and we threatened to take away the phone, it's like we're taking away her crack, It's like, this is the biggest thing ever. And so how have you seen that from when you were first teaching? And was there like a part, or do you remember anywhere in your career where you're like, oh my gosh, these phones are kind of like, they're a bigger deal than anyone probably realized, because you were teaching, like 20, you said you were teaching 20 years ago. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think about that 2006. What does it feel like 20 years ago?
Yeah.
I mean, I was 4 or something, right? Yeah.
I came out with a cell phone.
Yeah. I came out. She was just duck facing.
Happy birthday to me. That's pre-attached now.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But yeah, was there ever, like, looking back in your career, can you kind of see the difference from kids? Like, in 2006, yeah, we had cell phones, but like, it wasn't like the end all be all like it is today.
Right.
Like I remember my first little like Nokia phone where like it was like a brick and I would just play Snake on it, and there's like I had like maybe an hour's worth of minutes that I could use, so it's truly for emergencies. And like heaven help you, I remember, this was back in T9, when you were texting with like that. And I remember thinking, I think I was in 9th or 10th grade, and someone was talking about like text messaging. I was like, what a stupid idea. Why would you text someone? That takes way more time. Just call them. And like, there's been a few times in my career, like, I say career, but like that was as a kid. But like even another thing that I missed in a huge way, I remember when I was like 19 years old, I had just started doing this. And there was a gentleman training on using Skype to meet with clients. And I was 19, I wasn't even fully licensed yet. I was just like learning. And I just remember like tuning out of that training. I was like, this is the stupidest thing ever. No one is ever going to give you money over the computer screen. It will never happen. Like, I'm just not going to listen. And I was like, wow, I was so short-sighted, because now probably 70+% of my appointments are virtual, So for you, while you were teaching, did you see a big change in students and the way that cell phones impacted learning positively, negatively? What was that like for you?
Yes and no, because I feel very fortunate that, like I said, I spent the last decade at Washington Middle School, and my 7th grade team especially, we always had a very strong no cell phone policy at school. And so it was just like out of the question for the kids to even have it. And you have it and you lose it. Like and kids would tell on each other too.
When you say you lose it, like you like literally like, hey, give me your phone, it's done, I'm taking it for the day, or what?
Yep, take it for the day. It happens again, mom and dad come and pick it up. And so that eliminated a lot of the problems within, your school day. Outside of your school day, you have, nowadays, AI, my son, I've seen him before, just like hold the phone over the math sheet and it gives all the answers. And you're like, what is going on with this? It just blows my mind that that's even a possibility. But I've always felt very passionately about, and I know that a lot I feel differently, but
God bless America. Put it out there. Go for it. Send it. This is America. You're allowed to have opinions.
Piece that I feel like kids are at school, and if they're given 100% and teachers are holding them accountable for that 100% of time that they're there, that you go home and their time is their time. And I've always felt that way. So now that cell phones are a thing, and assessing kids with, did they do this work, or did they use their phone to get the answers, or did they copy from whoever on the bus? And just knowing that the grades that I gave students were, I assessed them in the class. I know that this is what they're capable of. I know they've mastered these skills. I know they still need help with these skills. I felt like that was helpful with, having that policy, that homework policy, and not, so phones weren't an issue in that case. There is the bullying piece. A lot of stuff would trickle in and dealing with that, the aftermath of that in a school setting, even though it didn't happen at school, if so-and-so feels threatened. It just was a lot of management in that sense.
Yeah. Yes. And I mean, the bullying, the way that our world has worked too, because like, it's, again, I don't know, this is a subject I never thought we'd be talking about, but like, even with school violence, like, I feel like that's another thing that as a teacher, maybe you could help me, because like, I'm just being completely transparent. Like, every day I send my son to school, I look and I said, Lincoln, you keep yourself safe today. No one's coming to save you. You need to fight when it's time to fight. You need to run when it's time to run, but no one is coming to save you. Do you understand that? Yes. And like, because I think the world that we live in, like, and this is hard for me because I am like probably the most staunch, like, 2A, everyone, assuming you're not a criminal and you've never had a felony, God bless America, I carry a gun everywhere. But it's also very hard for me to be like, there's always that fear of like school violence and how prevalent it's become in our society. What is that like from a teacher's perspective? And like, what do schools do to like basically, how do you approach that with kids? Like,
you do all the practice things. And actually my first year teaching down in California, we had a legit lockdown. Somebody had robbed a bank across the street and was on the loose. And so we didn't know, where he ended up. And so we spent the day in lockdown. So I always tell, the kids often take the drills, they're excited for him because they don't have to do school and they get to sit by their buddy on the floor and, snicker and make weird noises, and you try to get them to take it seriously. And I would always remind them, hey, Mrs. Buchman, I really had to do this and it was scary. I think for a lot of them, it's just, it doesn't seem like it could be real, honestly. Even though I lived through that experience, did I ever feel like it would truly happen to me? No, but I didn't think cancer would happen to me either, Mm-hmm. So sometimes it just takes, reality to hit you, to be like, oh man, what would I do, or how would we handle this? But yeah, I agree. And I feel fortunate with my own kids that, I have 3 boys that like, they're fighters. Like, I hope they never, and I pray they never get put in that situation, but like, I know my kids would be the one standing up for other kids or protecting the teacher. Like, that's just a part of who they are. Mm-hmm. They're runners and they're fighters.
Yeah. It's a weird dynamic for me as a father and like also a husband. I'm pretty traditional in my thoughts, and that like I approach life with my family. Like, at the end of the day, my job is to provide for and to protect my family. That is my job. No one else's job. It's my job. And, and so especially with the state of the world. Going back, because my son is very similar in that he is very much like the type of kid who like the right answer is the right answer to him. Like he's very much like, we don't like if you're breaking the rules, he's like, what are you doing? Like, no. But like, I always feel like I'm trying to make sure he's as ready as can possibly be for whatever the state the world is in, because I just feel like we end up being in this spot where, and I feel like very fortunate. I wish that there was a way that I could show people this. And I hope that this podcast helps at doing that, because like I talk to people from every walk of life. I talk to people who are super wealthy, down to people who are just getting started and are like, man, I just want to start with like $50 a month to save. I talk with people on both sides of the political spectrum, on both extremes, like maybe extremes too, but like both sides, leaning very left, leaning very right. And what I have realized more so than anything is like people want the same stuff. Like they have different ideas of how to get there, but for the most part, it's like people just, they want to be able to have a decent quality of life. They want to be able to afford where they live. They want to be able to like go out and take their family out to do something fun without worry about if it's going to break the bank. And it just makes me nervous to see like with our like young men, how like, and it's funny for me because like going to the Ranger Regiment and like doing the things that I've done, I just worry that with America, we're like so quick to be like, let's hop into the next war. Like, let's go for it, you know? And so it just makes me worried, like with my son, because I just want him to be like, I want him to be a fighter. I want him to do the right thing. But like, it's hard for me sometimes when I look at like being in the Army. And when I joined the Army, like my daughter was 2 when I joined the Army, and I joined thinking like, I'm going to go make a difference. There's people who want to come to America and who want to destroy what we have. And I was very much in that mentality. And like what I started to realize when I was in the Army, and I remember, while in Afghanistan one time, like we were going through the numbers of like how many people we'd killed in just like a 4-month period of time while we were there, and it's in the hundreds. And it was just our one company of Rangers. And then, when you start looking at kinetic strikes, you start looking at, on targets, and then you're like, well, then it's not just us. Then there's the special forces guys. Then there's the big Army conventional guys. Then there's all the other countries that are here. And you start adding up all like the destruction and death. And you're like, does this really change anything? Like, what are we doing? And I know that's probably not popular. A lot of people are like, oh, sell out, whatever. I don't really care. God bless America. Believe what you want to believe about whatever. But like, that's always what I think about with my son. And like, I think too, I don't know how I got on this tangent, but like, when we're talking about like kids who want to fight and kids who want to like do the right thing. So I take it so serious. Like I have him in jiu-jitsu, like he's 8. I'm teaching him how to shoot. Like I'm very, very serious about like teaching him like how to fight effectively, because I've also seen in the Army the difference that like one amazing soldier can have like at the platoon or even the company level. Like one amazing soldier can like really raise the tide and the skill level of everyone. And so
through their leadership,
yeah. Through their knowledge base, through just the things like another thing I saw that really made a big difference with great soldiers. A lot of them were Boy Scouts. A lot of them were very comfortable being outside, being in the woods. They knew little tricks and tips that like if you spent time in Scouts are nothing to you, but they could show little things that would make everyone's life more comfortable. And then you're not as stressed, and then you think clearer. Or like I would see guys who were just phenomenal warriors, but because they were so proficient, I think I had a team. Well, I had a team, and not I think, but I'm thinking about a team leader I had named Mitch, and Mitch Alfaro. And Mitch was not a big guy. He was, probably 5'8". But I remember going through training with him, because one of the things that the Ranger Creed talks about is like energetically will I meet the enemies of my country. Like energetically, like I am going after him. And I remember doing a shoot house with him and watching him aggressively hit every corner as like fast, but like with lethal intention. And I just remember seeing like, that's what this is supposed to look like. And when you get guys like that who could demonstrate how it was supposed to work, and it brought the lethality up for everyone. And so why I bring all that up is just like, I hope we never go into another situation where there's a draft, but I always worry. Like I think about that. It's happened. I mean, it happened, with Vietnam. And then I think about like, heaven forbid, they're like, oh, we're going to start drafting young men again. And then I think about like what after basic training is so little. Like you don't know anything. Like I remember going through basic training, you finish up, you're like, oh, I'm badass. Like, no. And then you go like to the selection process for the Ranger Regiment, which is called RASP, the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. And I remember with my buddy Archie, we went, after we finished RASP, we went somewhere, I think in like Florida or somewhere around there. Like, I don't remember, but we were just staying at like this hotel, like went to the beach, and we're just like all partying and just being idiots, And I was like, dude, we got this, man. Like, we could, come on, if we had to hit this hotel, we could. And I was like, I just remember now looking back, is like, you idiot. You were a child. You were talking about grown-up things you knew nothing about. And so it makes me
They are children.
I know. Yeah. It's like, that's another thing, is like, because I went into the Army, I turned 26 my first week in basic training, but then, I showed up and I'd have team leaders who were 22 years old, 23 years old, but these were kids who had 3-4 deployments, who had seen things that it's like insane to, like, these are guys, I think of one of my team leaders named Mike, and his last name was Banta, and he was talking to me about another ranger who was killed. So like behind us, for everyone, this is a memorial wall, and these are all the rangers that were killed in the War on Terror. And so he was talking about Christopher Horns, and he was telling me, because they were good friends, and Chris was a private on his first deployment, and he stepped on an IED and got killed. And Mike was telling me about this, and just, you start thinking about this, it's like, these are 21, 22-year-old young men who are like watching these types of things happen. And Chris was the second ranger that night to get killed. Earlier that night, Sergeant O'May, his also name is Chris, he was killed earlier that night, I believe with Lieutenant Ashley White. And that's like earlier in the day. I wasn't there. I'm retelling a story. So if I get this wrong, internet, I'm not claiming that I was there. I'm retelling a story. But like, they had stepped on an IED. It killed Sergeant O'May and then Lieutenant White, but then there's still a mission to do. And so it's like, well, they still have to hit this compound, and they go there. And then Chris Horns was killed that deployment as well. And so it's like, I just remember talking to people. And at this time I was like, I said I was 26, I think I was 27 when I showed up to battalion. And I just remember like thinking, like, these guys know a lot about war and a lot about fighting, but they know nothing about life. And I, at the time, had been married. I'd had a successful career already. Like, I'd already been working as a financial advisor before. And so it was one of those things where, like, just, I had a real life, quote unquote. I didn't go from high school to the Army. And it just was always this weird thing to me, like, to talk to these people. It was like, I have a lot of respect for what you guys are talking about. But, like, then you think most of these guys are living in the barracks. So they live like in like basically a dorm, with other guys, and they have very limited life experience because they're deployed half of every year, while they're back home, the other 6 months, they're always in a training cycle. And some of those times, like, you can't leave more than an hour away from the base, because you could be literally like, you have to be on standby, ready to deploy anywhere in the world within 18 hours. And so it's like, you would just see these young men who were like in amazing shape, like just knew everything about fighting, but like had no life experience. And like, it was so obvious when we'd go out and you just watch these guys like try to be part of normal society. Yeah, dude, you don't know how to act. Like, it was like Ricky Bobby. Like, I don't know what to do with my hand, But yeah, I remember too flying home, and like I think I've told this story before on the podcast, but like this actually, like, I remember we were flying home from Afghanistan, and normally you stop in Germany. And like, you just hang out, they, refuel the plane, and you might be there for a couple hours. You might be there for a day. It's just kind of like, well, we'll get you when we get you. So when you leave Afghanistan, they give you some Ambien. And so as soon as you get like over 10,000 feet, everyone, like, you're in a huge plane. It's not like a commercial plane. It's like a huge plane where you can lay out your sleeping pads, and people just pop their Ambien and go to sleep. So while we were flying, I popped my Ambien, and like, I went to bed in Afghanistan, and we got an in-air refuel. And so we were, as I was waking up, landing in Washington State. And so I fell asleep in Afghanistan, and I woke up as we were landing in Washington. And I remember just looking out the window of this plane. And in Afghanistan, like, when you're like away from the bases, yeah, it's beautiful, but like right there, like the major bases, it's like a dirty, gross, big city, And so as we were landing, I just was looking out, and like, it was beautiful and green, and cars are driving in straight lines. And I just remember being so angry and like thinking, these people don't even realize there's a war going on. Like, what are we doing? Like, these people have no idea there's a war going on. We're just out there dropping bombs on people, for like just in the last few days. And it's like, and everyone has no idea. And that's what I think is really weird with the Army. And like, again, going back to try and like circle it back with my son, why I try to teach him things and try and get him to think like, I don't know, just to understand the way the world works. Because the hard thing with that is you land, and the way that leave works for the normal conventional Army is you get basically a month's worth of leave every year. Okay. And in the big Army, most people can just take leave when they want to leave, or take leave when they want to take leave. But with the Ranger Regiment, you get 2 weeks before deployment and you get 2 weeks when you get back. It's pre-scheduled, and then you go right back into a training cycle. And so you show up and they're like, all right, go home, go see your wife, go see your kids, be a normal functioning member of society.
Forget about everything that just happened.
And I was talking with a friend about this one time. He's like, yeah, the difference between our generation versus previous generations in war fighting is, you had guys who were coming home from, like whether it was like, let's say World War II, they'd be on a ship. And they'd be on that ship for, a couple weeks. They'd be with their buddies. They
decompress.
They can just kind of settle in. And I'm not saying they didn't have their own issues. I'm sure they did. And don't get me wrong, I'd much rather fight in Afghanistan than, fight in Germany or something like that, World War II. Same with Vietnam. No, thank you. I talk to buddies. We do like a big Ranger breakfast. So I listen to guys who are like these long range patrol guys just out in the jungles of Vietnam. Like, screw that. No, thank you. But the difference, I think, for us is like you come home and you're expected to just go home. Go be in there. It's like when you're wondering why we have all these issues with soldiers and like self-harm and like it's just a weird thing. And so I don't know, with my son, I try to like teach him things, and like fighting is a very big thing. I was like, bro, you better learn how to fight, and not just like we teach him like, yes, shooting, but like we do jujitsu, because I'm always so worried. It's like, man, if a war kicks off and they start drafting kids, like knowing the type of boy my son is, he'll be like, I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to do that. And I understand because I did that. But I also am like, bro, you need to know how to do all this stuff at a high level, because heaven help you if you get drafted, you go to the big Army and you get essentially 12 weeks of training. I think it's 14 for infantry guys. I'm forgetting. I believe it's 14. They call it OSIT, one station unit training, but it's been years since I did this. I'm like, you don't know anything. So it just makes me nervous. So yeah, it's a tangent. So.
Well, and just honestly, Rob, like connecting what I started with my message to the world in thinking about all those young soldiers, that's part of it. Like I could sit every day and like be mad at the world and angry that God, why me? Why do I have cancer? Why are my kids going to be without their mom? And all these things, but then focusing on the positive and like,
well, that's all right. And like, I'm sure you have that moment too, where you're like, maybe going into the grocery store and you're like, man, nobody here knows what's going on inside my head right now. Nobody here realizes all of the shit that I have to deal with. And it's not just you, but like the other things that people are dealing with. And it's like that empathy value where it's like, that's super frustrating. And I know that's like when people lose like a spouse or a parent or anything like that, where it's like, some of the greatest things and like some of the biggest life lessons can come through that, and some of those beautiful things, and like maybe you learn like what like this other side of empathy or this other side of peace, where it's like all these daily chores are now very peaceful almost. And I think it's really hard for a lot of people to not be frustrated. It's like, well, why do I have to go through that in order to see this other side of things?
Definitely. Yeah. But at the same time, I do, I have that realization now, and I have that peace, and I have that love from everyone in the world. And I just think of these poor soldiers that, like, if maybe they have had a couple people tell them how much they mean to them, but maybe they haven't. And, to die that way and not ever experience that outpouring of love, like that just brings me back to, I truly do feel like I'm one of the lucky ones in the world. And, really, it's easier said than done, because I say, okay, yeah, maybe my death is being expedited, but everyone's dying. Like, and, just maybe don't let it take a cancer diagnosis for you to tell somebody, or, a car wreck, or they get killed in war or whatever. It's like, don't wait for that moment to let people know what they mean to you. And, I don't know.
I was curious, because you've come back to this a few times. Has there been anything that you can think of that was the most impactful thing that you heard when you needed to hear it most? Like, is there a time where you're just like, fuck, dude, what is this? And then someone just...
Well, I'll probably cry.
You don't have to share it if you don't want to. I mean...
No, it is, I love it. I'll cry because I love it so much. And, I was raised Catholic, and I have a lot of faith, but I'm not like outwardly preachy with my faith. And I've just that's just how I've always lived my life. But I do believe, and my grandma, my mom's mom, was about as holy as you could get. Probably should have been a nun or something.
Thankfully she wasn't. You wouldn't be who she was.
Exactly. But her name was Joan, and it was December of 2024. So I had just finished my chemotherapy, my targeted therapy, and I was getting a 3-week break before I went over to Seattle to start my surgeries. And I was like mentally so ready to do it, but I had a lot of anxiety leaving my kids, and just knowing them being nervous that I wasn't there and I was gone for so long, and what if something did happen? Because I remember when I did a Zoom meeting with my liver surgeon over at Seattle, he said, I really feel like your body can handle this. And I was so grateful that he had this, that he felt so strongly that I could do this. But then this little fear in the back of my mind, like, what if I can't do it? Like, what if my body can't do it? Like, am I ever going to see my kids again? So anyways, I was just feeling very anxious. And it was the night before my family's Christmas party. And I had a dream about my grandma Joan. And in the dream, it was one of those dreams where you like smell them and you they talk to you, and it's like she's been gone for 20 years, but her voice, it just was so real. And I was walking into Target, and she was walking out, and I looked at her and I said, "Grandma, is that you?" And she just said my name, and then she hugged me, and I was smelling her, and she told me everything was going to be okay. So that was the first thing. Then I had this neighbor over at my 9th Street house who, she's very spiritual, and she does, healing spaces, and, she's into Reiki. I don't know a whole lot about it, but that's her thing. And she wanted to know if she could come up and share with me what she learned when she opened my healing space. And so she told me, she said, "You have angels with you." And she's like, "Joan, I think it must be Joan of Arc." So then she said, and I'm like, okay, this is weird, two Jonies, right? And then my Aunt Lisa, my grandma's, my mom's sister, so also very holy, goes to church every single day, came to visit me in Seattle, and after my first surgery. And she said, I was in a bookstore, and I was just, I keep thinking of just how courageous you are, and you just never complain, and you just always, have such a positive attitude about things. And I just was thinking of you as I was walking this bookstore, and then I saw this bookmark, and it just jumped out at me. And I'm like, I'm going to get this for Nat. This bookmark is for Nat. And it said, I'm not afraid, I was born to do this. And it was Joan of Arc that said it. Yeah, it was a quote from Joan of Arc.
All this happened within how much time?
2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. And like I said, it was I was very much ready for this stage in my treatment, but I was also, a lot of fears that I hadn't experienced just being away from home and by myself over in Seattle.
What do you think as far as because what you said about staying offline, I mean, I think that's great advice. However, I imagine there's a lot of people whose doctors don't say that. And so there's people who are searching things, and maybe they're at the beginning stages of this. They just are getting that diagnosis, and who knows, maybe they stumble across what you have to share. What would you tell people who are just feeling that way you felt when you first got that diagnosis, and it's all ahead of you, and it's scary? Like what?
You know, that's hard for me, Rob, because when I got my diagnosis, I had known one other person that had colon cancer, and she was a young teacher out at Frenchtown. She was a decade younger than me. Her name was Justine, and nothing went her way. You know, she was first diagnosed stage 1, and they do the treatment, and then it's stage 2, and they do this, and then stage 3 and stage 4. She never once got good news. And, you know, she did all the things, and all I mean, we shared so many similarities in the fact she loved kids too. She was a kindergarten teacher. She was like so excited to be a mom someday, and just watching like nothing go her way, and just how her story played out. That's hard. And like, I know that that's reality for a lot of people that get cancer diagnoses or, you know, other health diagnoses. But for me, I have truly, like, I felt my bravery comes from, I truly feel like in my core that I'm going to be okay. And so it's hard for me to say, like, you know, you just got to believe in yourself, because that may not happen for somebody. But like, I have that peace because I just know with everything in me that I'm going to be okay. Like, this is just something I have to do. And I don't mean forever, but I feel like I'll get to see my kids be adults. And that's my number one goal.
How much has, it sounds like you were talking about your faith, and I'm kind of in that same boat where it's like I'm a Christian, I go to church, I do, like, I'm a Christian. I don't think going to church is like, oh, that's the thing, but like, I'm not the type of person either who's like, I'm going to beat someone with the Jesus stick. You know, that's not for me to do. I feel like, hey, I have my beliefs, and I'm very happy to talk about them. But I'm still, a normal person. Has that had much of an impact for you from a spiritual standpoint? Is that something that you find yourself like praying more or doing anything like that? Or is it just something that's like a peace for you?
I would just say it's a peace for me. The love and the family that is that way, that reassures me. You know, all the prayers, like of course I want all the prayers, and I want all, if it's prayers, if it's good vibes, if it's juju, whatever you have that you can send to me, I will take it all. So I wholeheartedly believe it is helping me and helping my peace and helping my success. Definitely. And, I think the other part is just having the tribe is you just don't feel it. Because in a lot of ways, this is so isolating, because you're the one doing it all. Nobody can help, get rid of the exhaustion or the pain or the anxiety or whatever. But their support does help, like, ease the burden. Definitely. I'm so grateful for all my friends and family. I have the best tribe in the whole world. They've been so supportive.
And this is me just asking because, again, completely ignorant, and it's kind of embarrassing because, like, I've had people that I'm close to who have gone through, cancer, battles with cancer, and like even my my wife's sister, like, she fought and beat cancer and has gotten through that. And like, what is like treatment with chemo like? Like, what is that actually? I mean, I know, like, at a base level, like, if my son asked me, I could explain a little bit, like, I think this is what's happening, but what is it actually doing, and what is it, like, the effects to you as a person?
So it's poison in your body that kills the fast reproducing cells. So that's why, different chemos have different side effects. I didn't lose my hair completely, but it definitely thinned out. My skin was horrible, like my nails, like I would be cooking dinner and then all of a sudden just like bleeding everywhere, and I'd have like my nails like falling off and just like weird things like that. But as far as like how you feel on it, I thought it was very similar to being pregnant, just like morning sickness. Like you just feel like, ugh, like nothing sounds good. You just don't have energy. But again, I say all the time that my kids were the biggest blessing and medicine of all, because you don't get to stop being mom. They still need food. They still need love. They still need taken care of. And you do all the things, and it just kind of, you got to power through. And so I was so grateful for them with the chemo, for sure.
With your kids, it sounds like, because I know earlier you were saying that in your household, even this, like with last week, with them saying, hey, there's, these 2 different areas that we need to pay attention to now. But it sounds like the household, everyone's, very hopeful, like, okay, we know we're going to be okay. This is what we're going to do. So like with your kids, are they just all the normal things I'm imagining still, all the same things that, teenagers do? And your youngest is 6 now, is that right?
Yeah, he just turned 6 last week. Yeah. I try not to think too far into this, but, in telling you about my friend Justine, that nothing went her way, not once. In my first battle, everything went my way. Like it was best case scenario for everything. And I just felt so lucky to have that be part 1 of my story. And then with this last recurrence, last week, we had gone in on Monday to biopsy the tumor in the lung, because they have to, know with 100% certainty that it is metastasized from the colon cancer and not new primary lung cancer. I mean, there's a very, very small chance that would be the case. And then also they test for certain tumor markers for different targeted therapies that will work and stuff like that. So I went in for my lung biopsy, first part of this new treatment, last week, and woke up and they told me that it was unsuccessful. And so I was like, oh.
I'm sorry, you said it was unsuccessful?
Unsuccessful. Yeah, they went in to do it, and he said he couldn't push through my chest muscle, which I was like, yay for my pecs.
Oh, gosh.
I got pectoralis muscle.
Yeah. You're like, I think, yay, question mark?
I'm like, just, I don't care, just push through. He's like, well, easier said than done. Apparently the tumor's close to the pulmonary artery.
So they cut you open and then they're going in?
Well, they stick a needle. They stick a needle through a larger needle, and then they put a smaller needle through the larger one, and then they get to the tumor, guided through CT scan, and then pull out a piece of it to send to pathology, or to get the pathology done on it. So they weren't able to actually get to the tumor. So we're trying again tomorrow morning with who my oncologist feels like is the most experienced radiologist. But now I have these new fears, it's next to my pulmonary artery. What if they nick that? So I'm a little bit stressed about that tomorrow.
How do you manage that thought process? We all, and this is another thing I do with my son every day. Lincoln, who controls your thoughts? Who controls your emotions? No one can control you, Lincoln. No one can make you happy or sad or angry. We get to decide that. And it's easier said than done. There's things that come up, and I think I do a pretty good job of this for myself. But I have, just like every marriage, my wife and I, we get in arguments, we get in things that don't go right. And then, sometimes they're bigger than others. And so then I come in here and it's I got to be ready to talk and always be up and be happy. And but when you're dealing with something like cancer, and it's, how do you keep your thoughts in a positive space and keep it from letting yourself spiral?
Well, the spiraling does happen, but it has happened very few times. I really tried to I honestly just spending time with my kids. They bring such positive energy to my life. That is the number one thing I can do. And I would say my spiraling happens most often at night when I'm trying to fall asleep, just, by myself in my quiet bedroom. And then my mind goes there and it's no turning back. So just even going and crawling in bed with them and just holding them and smelling them. It's weird mom things, just I would do anything for them. And actually I was helping my son, my 8th grader. He was writing a paper on an essay on To Kill a Mockingbird last weekend, and I was proofreading it, and he had some comment about you can't be brave unless you have fear. And, you know, when you have that fear, like, you have to have something greater in you that pushes past that fear, and that's bravery. And being able to stay brave for my kids, for my family, for my future, because, you know, I want that too. And just know that it is what it is. Like, I'm going to give it everything I've got, but whatever ends up happening will end up happening. And I just hope for the best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's, I mean, even seeing though, like you said, your son's in 8th grade and he was like, I know there's got to be like proud mom moments of stuff like that though too, to be able to understand, because like I can see the emotion that you have and like, and wanting things to go well, but also acknowledging like, okay, this is what it is. And like, and just like we were talking about earlier, it's like it's hard as adults, and then it's like, man, like, do you see like, and again, we don't have to, like, I don't want to, I know people have things that they do and don't want to talk about their kids. Like, I see different things that my son does or that my daughter does and the way they respond to stuff, and it's like, do you feel like with your kids, do you see them are they more insulated, do you think? Do you think that that's helping, or do you think that, like, do you see them, you know, being afraid, or what
yes,
is that like?
Definitely. I think it's coming out differently in each of them. I would say my oldest is an internalizer. He, you know, I'll just catch him like staring off into space, and I'll be like, what do you think about Chase? You know, and I just can like read his nonverbal body language that, you know, he's stressed about something. And I'm very lucky that he has always opened up to me. You know, it's getting a little more difficult now that he's a teenager, but he does. There are moments, usually at bedtime, where he likes to talk and just kind of unload and talk through things. So I'm grateful for that. My middle son acts out his behaviors, unfortunately. So we're trying to find ways to work through that, give him some tools in his toolbox of, you know, you feel and then you act. We need you to feel, then think, then act. So he's a work in progress, but we all are. So, but yeah, his is definitely more behaviors coming through. And then my youngest is just, he is just so empathetic and emotional, and he reads people's, he'll say, "What's wrong, Mom?" Like, and he'll just come up and hug. And like, you know, the other night when the Iowa, during the March Madness game, who is Iowa playing? Oh, Florida, in the number 1 seed. And I think Iowa's number 9, maybe, if I'm correct. And the kid made the game-winning shot on Iowa to take out the number 1. And he pointed up to the sky, and he, then the announcers start sharing the story of, oh, you know, his dad died when he's 9. And then after the game, he just went and hugged his mom. And of course, I'm like tearing up because I don't know how his dad died, but I'm like, how that mom is feeling right now, you know, and how the son's feeling. And it just was like so overwhelming. And Blake, you know, just turned 6, bawling his eyes out, can't go to sleep because he just feels so sad for that guy whose dad died. And it just... So I've got a little bit of everything.
It seems like, yeah, that it's especially the young kids, when they are as emotionally like in tune with the rest of the world, it's almost like what you're describing is similar to us. My daughter is like your middle son, it sounds like. It's just like like ready, fire, aim. Like emotions rule everything, like trying to rein that in. And my son is very like he'll get corrected. He'll be like, what was that, Lincoln? That's the wrong answer. He's like, yeah, okay, you're right. And he's just like, yeah, I get it. I messed up. And I was like, bro, you can be a kid though. Like, come on, it's all right. You don't have to be a grown up. You know, like he's like an old soul. And it's just like,
Yep. That's what I've always called my oldest. Chase is an old soul too, that, and now, that we are forced to deal with these big emotions. I feel like for so many years it was just, he just was my sweet little old soul. And now that we've got these big topics, I see him kind of repressing a lot of it, and then he'll eventually unload. So
do you see, like with your boys, I imagine though too, like, again, do you see them coming closer? Your oldest taking on like the big brother role and like helping his little brothers through any of that stuff? Or is it they all kind of deal with it themselves? Or
definitely when I was in Seattle, because I don't think there was a single night in Blake's life at the time, he was only 4, where I had not read him stories and put him to bed. Mm-hmm. And it's like, now mom's gone for 6 weeks. And so, Chase and Dad took on that role and filled my shoes for a few weeks.
It'd be like bittersweet for you.
Absolutely.
Like you're like, I'm so grateful to have these men like helping. But then it's like, but I want to be the one reading stories.
I know. Yeah.
It's it is like, and it's hard. Like I'm sitting here and I'm trying to be like, keep it together. Do not, but like I do. It's just, especially when like we have kids and like I understand exactly what you mean. Where it's like there's not like my son. He goes through these weird things every now and then, and like he asked me something, I don't know, probably in the past 2 months, like something like, Dad, would you rather have this or me? And it's something silly, like, would you rather have all the money in the world or me? I'm like, I don't care about the money. Like, I will take you 100 out of 100 times, 1,000, 1,000,000 out of 1,000,000 times, son. Like, there's nothing. I was like, I don't care at all. And like, he asked me something one time though, like to the tune of like, well, like, it was kind of a weird way he put it, but he was basically like, would you kill someone for me? Like, if you had to. I was like, all the time. But it's like these, like, looking for, like, I'm important, like, and just.
How deep is your love?
How deep, that's exactly. How deep is your love? I'm thinking of the song now. This is a funny thing. There's this cover of these 3 kids they're doing How Deep Is Your Love? And it's like, one of the sister is singing, and she's got a beautiful voice. The one like middle brother is playing a guitar, and then they have their youngest brother who's wearing like scuba gear and flippers and just dancing in the background, and they're singing this song. And just hearing you say that, it's like one of those videos I go back to probably like every 6 months. I was like, oh, these kids are just like a genuine, authentic, like.
I'll have to Google that.
I'll find it and send it to you. If you guys are watching this video, it's worth it. But yeah, that's exactly it. How deep is your love? And like, that's what's so hard as parents, because it's like, I think we all want so bad to like, I heard someone one time talking about like, I don't want to give my kids everything they want, but everything they deserve. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when you have big things going on with life, it's just so easy to lose track of like what really matters the most. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I was thinking about as you were talking about, just how you guys as a family have been able to kind of hone in on what's more important, and how you've talked about people just expressing love. Like my wife and I were just talking about this, I think last night, maybe the past 2 nights, where again, we were talking off camera about some of the challenges with my daughter, and I don't want to go into all that, but she's having challenges just like a lot of teenage girls do. But it's been very stressful. Like it's been stressful for us dealing with that, and dealing with, just kind of the craziness of it all. And like, it's put a lot of stress on us recently. And I think that so often with marriage, like she was saying something to me, she said something to me, and I'm not going to repeat it because it's, some things need to stay private, but it was just one of those things where it's like, you're not making me feel this way. And I was like, and I was like, I do feel that way towards you, and I'm sorry I'm not showing that. Like, I think that that's a lot of times too, is just like finding the space to take time to make sure that like we're communicating the way that someone needs to receive it. Almost like the 5 love languages, it's like, and I just feel like with hearing you talk, it seems like in your family, as challenging as things have been, that part of your ability to communicate more effectively, or just from other people, like letting you know you're valued, and like it is. I'm sure it's something that's like, man, I'm glad to know that I matter to people, because I think what's like, I heard someone talking not terribly long ago, where he was talking about up until recently, the human experience had nothing to do with purpose. It had only to do with survival. If you look back even up to maybe, a couple hundred years ago, the majority of us didn't live that long. Like we are living, about as long as most people do. And now, getting into our 40s, basically middle age, but like there was a time where it's like, even with Social Security, you look at Social Security, most people would die before they got to Social Security. And then if they made it that far, they got a couple of years and they were gone. And so for so long in human existence, it's always been about survival. And just in the past, really 100, 150 years, we've gotten past that to where it's like, now it's about purpose. And I think this is why we struggle a lot as people. It's just that like, we're still trying to figure out how to find purpose and what that looks like from one person to the next. And so it is sad that it's so often like for all of us, it's like, it takes these big tragedies or big life events for us to stop and be like, what really matters? Like what is really the most important thing here? And so again, it's something that I don't think people get until they've had experiences like that. And like we were saying earlier, like I'm sure the same way you would never wish that someone has to get cancer, to feel and to see things the way you see it. In the same way that I would never wish for someone to have to go in the army and watch people just get destroyed and blown up or killed or whatever. It's like, but sometimes that is the way that life works. And it's like, you don't really appreciate how precious life is until it's like I just think of people that are like, I knew who were just like amazing soldiers. Like or even people like I think of like, I never met Christopher Gomez. He's up on the wall here. I never met him. I think he was on his 14th or 15th deployment when he was killed. But I know guys who was with him and basically talking like, this guy was like the epitome of a great soldier. Or like Master Sergeant Joshua Wheeler, he's right here. This gentleman right here. I heard guys that I like knew were just amazing Rangers just talk about this guy as like the epitome of the best soldier. Like this is the standard. And just understanding like it's still like people get killed, and it made it very real to me because like I knew soldiers that were so much better at soldiering than me that got killed. And it's like, well, shit, like if that happened to them, like what chance do I have? And I've also told this story before. Sorry guys, if you're watching these, but I repeat stories, but like I will never ever forget. I remember leaving when I, ETS. So your end of time in service, was when you get out of the Army. And so I remember leaving Joint Base Lewis McChord and the passes for anyone who's ever made the drive from Washington to Montana. You go over multiple mountain passes, and there's the one that you go over right as you're getting out of Seattle. And I was sitting, my car's packed, and I literally was holding on like in my lap to my DD-214 and to like my like little award that they give you that did some mean things, just like printed on a nice piece of paper. I just started bawling, like just crying while driving, like to the point where I was like, I'm going to pull off and just cry for like 2 or 3 minutes. And I just remember thinking like, it's over. Like, oh my God, I made it. Like I'm out. And like, I started thinking of friends of mine who like just had getting, just like I had friends who got seriously hurt. I had like one of my best friends who broke his neck, just people I knew who had gotten killed, people, just all these different things. And I was like, other than me jacking up my shoulder a little bit, like I'm pretty okay. And it just like, just that realization, like that moment of like, oh my gosh, like it's over. But just like, again, you don't get anything like that until you have been in that experience. And like, I don't know how to, I'm not wishing that on anyone, but it's just one of those things where I think you only gain perspective from like going through life events,
Yeah. And I had a lot of anger initially with my diagnosis that it's like, God, how my body failed me. I never knew until it was too late that this was going on. I mean, I had 0 warning signs other than my 24-hour milk dud bloating. And then I'm like, okay, no, like I found out at worst case scenario, right? So it's not going to progress and keep like, and going back to my friend Justine, how it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. I'm like, I'm already at the worst. Like now it's just, I'm going to spend the rest of my life and I will just coexist with cancer. And it's not going to go away ever. Even when I'm no evidence of disease, it's like, I'm not cured. It's just, let's see how much time I can get before it pops up again. And, we'll keep doing this and hopefully, keep adding on the years, and before I know it, my kids are going to be adults. And that is the piece I have now, is just knowing that, okay, yeah, this is my story. I'm It's never going to go away. It'll be okay. Like, we'll get through it.
I think too, for like, just, there's so many people, and I've talked to my wife about this before. I don't know how to say this right. This might come off, I don't mean it to come off as insensitive. If it does, and I apologize to anyone who's listening. The thought of like getting in a car accident and it's just over. You never get to say goodbye. You never get to talk to anybody again. You never get to tuck in your kids again. You never get any of that stuff.
Closure. Yep.
Yeah. And I've talked about like, as hard as it would be to get very sick, and even if, like, whether it's you, whether it's me, again, I think about this. I think about dying all the time. It's always on my mind. And because it's not afraid. They're not, like, I think of like this is a silly thing, but like the Peter Pan quote, "To die would be a great adventure." Like, I always have been very comfortable with like that. It's just right now with my son being as young as he is, that's what's hard for me.
100%.
I know
That's,
you understand.
yep.
You know? And because my son, he's almost 8. I just feel like I have so much left to teach him. And I have so much like left to like be there for. And you've said a couple times like, oh, my kids will be adults. And I think that like my wife and I were talking about this a couple weeks ago. It was like, if we could just get to the point where he's an adult, you know, hey, we're all going.
of course I want more. Like, I want to be a grandma.
course.
But the number one thing, like, and you always need your mom. You know, I'm 45 right now. My mom turned 70 on Thursday, and I still need her, and I know they will always need me, but I just think that's just such a huge milestone to see them to adulthood, and that is my number one.
Yeah, and I think that's like for all of us as parents, and like when I feel like hearing what you're saying, I can see how you've found like the positives, and that's like what's that? The Viktor Frankl book, Man's Search for Meaning, I believe. I'm drawing a blank, but essentially where, you know, he was in a concentration camp, and, you know, he talked about, it's been years since I read this book, but he talked about how it was the people whose outlook was positive that made it. And there was a lot of people that just had a bad outlook, and so they did bad, like they didn't take care of themselves, or they just gave up, and so they didn't make it. And the people who had a positive outlook had a much higher likelihood of surviving these traumatic experiences they were going through. And so, like, I can tell that you are doing that. And I think that's super positive and something that people can hopefully take before something bad happens. Just be like, you know, like just stopping to think like, well, what would your life be like? Like, again, I think about accidents all the time. Like, just in the past, just a couple months ago, there was a motorcycle accident right out here, and I was one of the first responders, and this guy, right as I was leaving jiu-jitsu, like ran into a car, and he was killed, unfortunately, right there. And it was random because one of the people, like when I went up, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go try and help and be a first responder. And my buddy Ryan, who's he's a surgeon here in town, he's like if anyone could be there, like someone who would know, like there's not really anything you could do, but like it's like this man, if anyone has a chance of keeping you alive until the paramedics get there, it's like this guy. And he happened to be there too. He was actually, we were having a Christmas party, so he was driving to Costco to pick up stuff for our Christmas party that he was coming to later, and we happened to run into each other at this, you know, this man's accident. And unfortunately, the man didn't make it. But I just was thinking about that because, you know, you look up stuff and you go and you're like, who was this guy? And, you know, he's a young guy. He's in his early 30s. You know, he's, you know, a stepdad to a couple of different kids he's super involved in. He had his son who's 1 year old. And you're just like, man, that guy never will get to say goodbye to his son, never get to tuck him in again. And I think of like my buddy Cameron was killed when his wife Stevie was like 20 weeks pregnant. And he was, I wasn't on this mission. This was after I got out of the Army. So again, I'm retelling a story. But I was talking to another of my friends who was there, and I was like, what happened there? He's like, Cameron got unlucky. He's like, we were chasing after this guy, and he just fired off some pot shots, and Cameron caught a round right to the head. And, you know, he didn't die immediately. Were able to medevac him out here, but eventually he did die. It was like, the worst part, man, is we just dropped a bomb on that guy afterwards. It's like we could have just let him go, and we just would have hit him with this drone strike, and he would have died, and Cameron would have been okay. But like, there's pictures, and I remember with like things that like get me like, oh my God, is like there's a picture of Stevie when they had their daughter, and she's holding a photo of Cameron, and she's got this little baby on her, and I just was like, that type of stuff. I'm like, man, like, what the hell is all this about? And it's just like to never, as much as I think about like, I would hate to die in an accident, I think, man, I've had 8 years with my son. They've been so wonderful. And I've had this time with my daughter and my wife. And like, I think of Cameron, and it's like, his daughter will never know him. And it's just like, even when things go the worst they could, it's like, I've been very blessed, you know, and I'm, all that to say is like, I can tell that's how your approach is.
Absolutely. Or even just the fact like, this is horrible, but what a blessing that it's not my children dealing with it. You know, it's like, if this were my kids, I would give anything to switch, right? And it's like, you know what? I didn't even have to give everything to make the switch because it's me anyways.
So true.
And it's, yeah, again, I'm one of the lucky ones.
Yeah. And it's the thought process that like, there's always a silver lining in every situation. And I feel like even that just is like, you're right. Like, because you're right. Like, I've thought about that. Like, you say these silly prayers, and I know that God doesn't work like this, but like, God, if there's any ill in my children's future, give it to me. You know, it's like the saying, it's like, where it's like, if there's a war to happen, let it happen now, where I'm young enough to fight so that my children don't have to fight in this war, you know? And it's like the same thing. And, you know, that's a great perspective. I don't even know how long we've been talking for. It's been a minute. So, I appreciate you coming in. I'm not just trying to end it right there, but like, is there anything that you've shared so much, and like, thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Like, is there anything you'd like to say, anything that you feel like, man, this is on my heart and I just want to make sure I get it out there, or anything before we wrap up that?
I think we've touched on it lots, but just to encourage people to always let those they care about and love know what they mean to them, because you just never know when it's going to be the cancer diagnosis or the car wreck or the, you know, whatever it ends up being. So
yeah, I would say like it's a good place to end it there.
Yeah.
I just think about like trying to call my dad all the time too. It's like, I try and call him because I think about that as well. Like, as far as like, as we get to be older, you know, Lord willing, that it's like, man, my little dude's gonna leave the house one day, right? And then you're like, well, I hope you call me, bro. Like, I miss hanging out with you. And so like, when I call my dad, he's always like, son, you have no idea how much it makes my day to hear from you. And I think just my mom and I, we talk about that, and this is something that breaks my heart, because I know a lot of people where they don't have really any relationship with their parents to the point where they avoid them, or they purposely don't talk to them. And you talked about like a goal of hopefully getting to, you know, we all want to, like, I think the Lord willing, to be a grandparent would be amazing. But then I think about how sad it is that there's so many people out there that, like, not only do they not have a relationship with their kids, but their kids don't want a relationship with them. And like, to me, it's like, oof, that if someone wanted to ruin my world, that would be how you would do it.
absolutely. Cancer will not ruin my world. Like, that is something that would ruin my world. Absolutely.
If something happened where my daughter or my son were just like, F you, I want nothing to do with you, don't ever contact me again, like, that to me is like, I've lost everything, you know? So, well, Natalie, thank you for sharing.
You are so welcome. Thanks for having me, you guys.
I appreciate it so much, and I just appreciate you being open and being willing to share, which I know is like sometimes hard, you know, but I think this is a message that there's going to be a lot of people who can really benefit from. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, appreciate it. Well, guys, thank you guys for watching, and Josie, another episode where I took over, sorry.
No, I'm just listening.
Well, thank you guys for watching, and really appreciate it. We'll see you guys on the next episode that we have here. Take care.